Hey guys, today I'll show you a science fiction thriller TV series named C Season 3. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The drama begins after the blind warrior Voss defeated his brother Ado in the battle. Ado's favorite soldier, Ren, was dispatched to the front lines of the Gannet people. At this moment, she and her few men are struggling desperately. Suddenly, an arrow tied with a rope breaks their formation. As panic sets in, a massive wave of enemies surges along the rope. This battle consists entirely of blind combatants. The slaughter is just as bloody and merciless. Relying solely on smell and hearing, their strikes are deadly accurate. Faced with such a fierce onslaught, all Ren could do was mount a forced defense. With the enemy numbers swelling, she commands an immediate retreat. As the only one in the group with sight, she is powerless against the overwhelming numbers. They reach the retreat point, where sliding down the rope will lead them to safety below. Ren fights as she retreats, seizing the rope in a critical moment. It is their secret escape route, now discovered by the enemy. Faced with the need to eliminate future threats, Ren makes a decisive choice. She glances up at the oncoming enemy, then down at the safe zone, and severs the rope with a powerful strike. Ren lands safely while her pursuers crash to their deaths. Then, a hailstorm of blades rains down as the enemy throws down every weapon they have. By sheer luck, she narrowly escapes. Ren then leads the survivors to a warship. They have arrived at the frontline base of the Trivant Kingdom. Gazing at the dense pursuit behind them, Ren knows the base has been exposed, and it's only a matter of time before it falls. Inside the rust-streaked warship, the commander is furious over Ren's devastating defeat. He can't fathom how the mighty Trivant has fallen so far, defeated by the lowly Payan nation, and now struggling against the barbaric Gannet tribe. At this moment, Trivant's scientist, Tormata, urges everyone to stay calm. There's no need to panic because a new weapon has been developed. All they need to do now is to wait, biding their time for the Gannet to walk right into their trap. Meanwhile, far to the east in the Payan capital of Pensa City, Queen Kane is oddly elated by the pain of childbirth. Just by this account alone, her eccentricity is well-deserved. With the help of her sister, Magra, Kane successfully gives birth to a boy. The loud cry of the newborn complicates the emotions of Kofun, who is hiding in the stairwell. Hearing the cries also are Lord Harlan and the General June, who waste no time rushing upstairs. They demand that Magra hand over Kane to face punishment. However, Magra believes it's not yet time. She wants her sister to temporarily experience the joy of motherhood. That night, Kofun visits his mother Magra, ostensibly to see the newborn child. Magra offers him to hold his own son, but Kofun is reluctant to accept and leaves dejectedly. In the dead of night at the Blind Men's Pub, Lord Harlan senses Kofun's inner turmoil. Through his guidance, Kofun comes to realize the child is innocent, yet he is still unsure of what to do next. The scene shifts back to the Trivant warship base. The Gannet people have found their way down the mountain, and their army looms at the base's edge. At that moment, Olaman, one of Jurla Morel's sighted children, finishes setting the bombs and takes off his mask. Ren discovers he is sighted, and Olaman also learns of Ren's secret. There's no time for further thought as Tormata rallies everyone, boasting that they will annihilate the enemy without losing a single soldier. As the enemy forces close in and enter the minefield, deafening explosions erupt in quick succession. Ren witnesses such a scene for the first time, too shocked to speak. The terrifying lethality leaves the enemy forces completely obliterated. Tormata's face beams with the joy of victory, while Olaman's expression reveals his anguish. In stark contrast to the bloodthirsty conflict, Voss, living freely in the mountains, seems to enjoy a carefree existence. The man by his side is Ranger, the very friend who helped him escape from Trivant years ago. Since choosing to live in seclusion after the battle, Voss has resided here with his faithful friend. But what he can't imagine is that the seemingly tranquil life is being targeted by an unknown danger. Though Voss has bid farewell to his family to live in seclusion in the forest, his heart remains laden with concern. Despite spending his life striving to protect them, he believes that it was he who brought war and death upon them. Ranger, aware of Voss's inability to let go of his brother's death, often engages him in conversations about life, attempting to untangle his friend's emotional knots. On the contrary, Magra harbors resentment in her heart for her husband's unexplained departure. At this moment, her daughter Haniwa is sharing her experiences with her mother. It turns out that she and the female comrade were strolling the streets when they spotted sighted civilians, which astonished Haniwa. She wondered if there were more people with sight besides them. Her brother Kofun interrupts her, saying it's not impossible. Contrarily, he'd rather be blind than a sighted person despised by others. Haniwa retorts, believing that sight is a gift from the heavens that should be cherished and protected. Kofun laughs his hair off, mocking her tone, reminiscent of their late biological father, Gerlamarel. This comment prompts Haniwa to counterattack, insisting that preserving sight means saving lives, not just for her, but for his son as well. At this, Kofun becomes agitated and storms out of the room. Magra chastises her daughter for lacking respect for her brother, but Haniwa disagrees, wishing their father were still around to teach Kofun how to cope. Mentioning Voss's name instantly wounds Magra, who believes that since he abandoned his family, he has no right to teach anyone about fatherhood. Now it's Haniwa's turn to be furious. She accuses her mother of deceiving her father. Magra responds, saying that everything she has done was for their sake. Haniwa, unable to comprehend her mother's answer, leaves the room, leaving Magra alone, engulfed in sorrow. Perhaps neither of them is wrong. It's just that reality is too cruel. Meanwhile, the formidable power of weapons stirred the ambitions of Trivant's scientist Tormata. As the smoke from the explosions cleared, Tormata lamented that he was a step too late. If only he had developed the weapons sooner, their general Edo might not have perished in the war. Shifting his tone, he insisted that Ren should henceforth obey his commands. Now that the war against the Gannet tribe had come to a close, they planned to focus their firepower on Payan, with motives not only of revenge, but also of further exploration. However, before that, he was determined to find Voss to avenge the fallen Edo. Back in the city of Pensa, Haniwa once again encountered the sighted man, but he was now being sentenced to death by fire by a group of witch hunters. It turned out that not everyone was willing to change after the queen abolished the witch hunters. They still believed that sight was evil. Seeing the sighted man about to be burned alive, Haniwa intervened to stop it. When she announced her identity, it only drew ridicule from the crowd who didn't care about any queen. No matter how much Haniwa resisted, she couldn't stop the event from unfolding. For Haniwa's safety, the comrade urgently dragged her away. That evening, Magra convened an internal meeting. They discussed not only the rise of the civilian witch hunters, but also brought up the matter of Trivant. It turned out that after the last war ended, they had post-war negotiations and decided to turn over Queen Cain as a form of apology to secure peace. Now that the child was born, they were expected to honor their promise and hand over the queen. However, Magra suddenly had a change of heart. After all, this was her own sister. June warned that it was a mistaken decision. With threats looming, if they refused to surrender the queen and broke their promise to Trivant, war would inevitably resume. As everyone feared, Trivant's ambassador soon arrived in the city of Pensa, expecting the queen as per the agreement. Lord Harlan awaited to receive them. The ambassador questioned where the queen was and why she hadn't come to meet them. Harlan was clearly at a loss for how to respond. Deep in the jungle, Voss returned from his usual hunt to find that the tribe leader, Bo, had arrived at some unknown time. This wasn't her first visit, and Voss knew her purpose, yet he still refused to come down from the mountain to serve as her tribe's mentor. It was at this moment that a voice suddenly rang out. It was Tormata, who had followed Bo to this place. Realizing it was her presence that had revealed Voss's location, Bo was consumed with guilt. She groped for her weapon to prepare for battle, while Voss also armed himself and took up a fighting stance. Tormata revealed that he was there for revenge. Then he began to mock Voss, and Bo grabbed her weapon and charged, but the sudden explosion knocked Voss flat. For a moment, both their lives hung in the balance, and sensing his goal was accomplished, Tormata turned and left. Voss had narrowly escaped death and lay in agony on the ground, his faithful dog swiftly bringing his friend Ranger to his side. After a thorough search, they found that Bo had been blown to pieces. Hearing this result, Voss was overwhelmed with grief. Gasping for breath, he lay on the ground, deducing that this was Trivant's latest weapon. Their grand arrival here was surely not only for revenge. They were likely looking to reignite war with the nation of Payan. The next morning, Voss buried Bo on the mountain. She had followed him when they fled their village years ago, never imagining such an end. Ranger understood Voss's sorrow and guessed his next move. As expected, Voss told Ranger that he had to go down the mountain to warn Magra of the impending danger. Ranger said little, only reminding Voss to be wary of traitors, then hurriedly took his leave after their farewell. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Payan, Magra and General June were interrogating prisoners, recently rampant witch hunters. Afterwards, June requested Magra to execute the criminals, but Magra said she couldn't bring herself to do it. After all, Queen Cain had been sheltered under the witch hunters. Killing a few of them would only have a negative impact. June fell silent upon hearing this. Seeing that Magra took no action against the internal strife, June decided to tackle the problem alone. Everyone on alert, they realized this place was a gathering spot for witch hunters. June intended to resolve the issue right there. These were his former soldiers who had banded together after the dissolution of the witch hunters, still clinging to the traditional belief that those with sight were witches. However, as times changed, the return of the sighted was an inevitable part of history. June couldn't persuade these stubborn youths, leaving him no choice but to use force. Formerly, his capable lieutenant was unwilling to show weakness. Pulling out their weapons, they prepared for a duel. Due to his aged body, June couldn't withstand this strong warrior. Though overpowered, June's will was unyielding. With a few simple and brutal moves, he quickly subdued his old subordinate. June spared his life, but cut off one of his ears as a warning. Then he told everyone to disperse, declaring everything was over. That evening, inside a tent in the city of Pensa, Harlan was using his muscles to diligently appease the Trivent ambassador, who told Harlan that they had to convince Magra to hand over the queen. This was part of the peace agreement and couldn't be glossed over. Without a choice, Harlan quickly resumed his efforts. Compared to the hard-working Harlan, Magra was hesitating in her sister's room. At that moment, the queen was instructing her sister to be more ruthless, saying that if she governed like this, the nation would soon be handed over to others. Magra understood this well and resolved to hand the queen over to the ambassador, then left the room. Far away at Trivant's frontline base, Ren took advantage of the sleeping soldiers and quietly found Olaman, who knew how to make bombs. They were both surprised to meet another person with sight. Ren learned that Olaman was mistreated because Tormata had kidnapped his family, threatening him to help him develop the new weapons. Knowing that, Ren decided to rescue Olaman and then save his family, on the condition that Olaman destroyed the bombs he had made. Ren believed these weapons were too powerful and would only lead to more chaos in the world. However, as soon as they left the room, they were discovered by some soldiers. In the darkness of the fight, the two-sided individuals had no advantage, and Olaman was unfortunately stabbed to death. Ren managed to escape, but with no way to turn back, his fate was uncertain. The scene shifts to the 17-year-old Kofun, who had a son with his aunt. Since the child's birth, he was tormented inside. He couldn't accept this reality but understood the child was innocent. Haniwa, seeing her brother so disheartened, bluntly told him he didn't act like a man. The comrade comforted Haniwa, telling her not to rush, as Kofun's shame and confusion would eventually fade with time. Just as she had predicted, Kofun went to where Queen Cain was imprisoned. He no longer avoided the truth and decided to embrace his son. At that moment, Magra also arrived upstairs. She wanted to wait for her son's transformation, hiding out of sight. Kofun refused to hold the child, but when the queen handed the fat baby to him, he bent down to receive him, carefully cradling the child. Looking at his son in the swaddle, Kofun bloomed with joy as a father, but he quickly noticed something was wrong. After some testing, he realized the child had no sight. Shocked, Kofun hastily handed his son back to the queen and fled the scene like a broken Tesla bike. Magra, unaware of the reason, thought her son hadn't accepted the reality yet. The queen jokingly said that Kofun was an incompetent husband for not daring to hold his own child. This remark ignited Magra's pain. She bent down to take the child back and then left quickly. She was determined not to keep her sister any longer, who was like a venomous scorpion. Magra soon found the Trivent ambassador and agreed that they could take the queen the next day. Her words were clean and decisive, catching the ambassador off guard. At this point, Harlan was also bewildered because things had gone smoothly then as expected. That night, back at her residence, Magra suddenly felt a familiar presence. Indeed, it was her husband Voss, who had been missing for a year after the war. Magra clung to her husband, ready for a tongue massage, and the long, pent-up longing poured out in tears. But before they could share their emotions, they began to argue. Magra discovered that Voss was injured, and upon questioning, she learned that Trivent was responsible and had developed powerful weapons. Voss explained that his return was to warn Magra to be wary of Trivant's movements and to prepare for battle as soon as possible. However, Magra took it lightly, believing it was impossible, especially since the Trivent ambassador was in their country and would be taking the queen away the next day to fulfill the peace agreement. Voss angrily accused her of not learning from past mistakes. Magra retorted that Voss understood nothing and that times had changed, with many things having evolved. Unable to sway her, Voss described the potency of the weapons again before leaving the room without enjoying a hormone yoga session. Voss didn't return to the wilderness. Instead, he aimed to interrogate the ambassador Magra had mentioned, convinced that the peace was a sham. After dealing with the guards, Voss entered the tent with a knife in hand and woke the ambassador, demanding to know Trivant's true intentions. Harlan, recognizing Voss's voice, chastised him to stop this absurdity. Surprised by Harlan's interference, and as the ambassador blew a whistle for alarm, Voss hastily retreated. But the guards converged quickly and subdued him. The ambassador, now dressed and furious, drew her sword to behead Voss. Just then, Magra arrived in time to stop the farce. Upon returning home, Magra had no energy to criticize her husband's recklessness. Meanwhile, Voss discovered Kofun's child and asked whose it was, thinking it might be Magra and Harlan's. Magra denied it and explained that although she was married to Harlan, she had always remained chaste for Voss. Magra revealed that the child was Kofun's with Queen Cain. Voss was dumbstruck, unable to comprehend his son's actions. Magra clarified that things were not as they seemed, but what shocked Voss even more was yet to come. He asked where Paris was, and upon learning of Paris's death, he ran out in a rage. Paris meant more to Voss than anyone else, and now, hearing of the murder of his dear one, he was almost maniacal with the desire to tear the queen apart. However, when he arrived at the place of captivity, it was already empty. Following the queen's disappearance, the kingdom of Payan mobilized its royal guard to sweep the entire city of Pensa, but they found nothing. June knows she's a menace, but all he can do is sigh, faced with even more pressing issues. After hearing June's search results, Magra is restless, for she had promised results today to the Trivant ambassador, but has nothing to deliver. If Trivant learns that the queen has escaped, war between the two nations would surely erupt again. Magra begs Harlan to appease the flirtatious ambassador, but Harlan knows well that even if he could persuade the ambassador in bed, they couldn't appease Trivant's triangular council. With no other recourse, they can only take things one step at a time. At this moment, Magra regrets, unable to foresee that things would come to such a pass. Simultaneously, Voss is locked in the dungeon, with his daughter Haniwa compassionately by his side. They speak of Paris's death, their words laden with hatred for the queen. Just then, Magra enters, wishing to speak with Voss in private. Haniwa takes this chance to confront her mother, asking why she would protect the serpent-like queen and imprison her own father. Magra explains that she fears Voss might seek out the ambassador again, and considering the nation's relationship is in grave danger, she has to do this way. After Haniwa leaves, Voss asserts they should have surrendered the queen sooner, but Magra counters, asking if it was easy for him when he killed his brother. Voss falls silent before suggesting they prepare for war again, confident in Trivant's judgment. But Magra won't waver from the peace agreement. Once Voss calms down, Magra advises him to concentrate on their son Kofun, who needs his father's guidance. At that moment, Kofun wandered the streets in confusion. Witch hunters were proclaiming their heretic doctrines, and judging by the crowd's enthusiasm, they were blatantly ignoring their General June's warnings. Kofun overheard some of their speeches, and finding them dull, he headed to the blind man's bar to alleviate his gloom. However, upon leaving, he noticed that several figures were following him. Kofun sensed the danger behind him, drew his dagger and prepared for combat, ready to vent his frustration. Relying on their sense of hearing, the pursuers pinpointed Kofun. Although Kofun had honed his martial skills, he wasn't quite up to taking on 100 men single-handedly. In the nick of time, the comrade arrived, effortlessly subdued the attackers with a few moves, accompanied by Voss himself. Seeing his long-estranged father, Kofun didn't show excitement, but felt a great sense of unease, making up some excuses to leave. Voss could guess at his son's thoughts, and realized it might take more time. Upon hearing her son was injured, Magra rushed over, convinced that the witch hunters were to blame. She ordered the arrest of all the witch hunters and sentenced them to death by hanging for treason. June was shocked at the new queen's swift change and attempted to dissuade her. He reminded Magra that she must keep her identity in mind and not think like a mere parent. However, Magra was utterly opposed, believing that the witch hunters had been too brazen, daring to harm her daughter and even attempting to murder her son. Seeing that Magra wouldn't be swayed, June declared that he wouldn't carry out the order and would resign if forced. An angered Magra then summoned a captain and issued the order anew. This time, she decided to learn from her sister, to never show mercy to enemies. June's defiance stemmed from his reluctance to execute his former subordinates. After visiting the captured witch hunters and failing to sway their beliefs, June had no choice but to leave, disheartened. Magra swiftly convened a public trial. Standing before all the witch hunters, she articulated the laws of the nation and then proceeded to execute 3 of the witch hunters. The excruciating groans of the condemned echoed among the crowd, sending chills down their spines and instilling a profound fear of the majesty of the law. Seeing the effect she had achieved, Magra made an unprecedented decision. As a warning, she pardoned all the remaining witch hunters, an act unheard of in the history of the nation of Payan. June expressed his admiration for her decision, yet it seemed to hint at some impending danger. The scene shifts to Ren, who found her lover Haniwa after the war, and they embraced each other, sharing the longing they felt during their time apart. Shortly thereafter, Magra called an emergency meeting. According to Ren's description, Trivant now possessed a weapon called a bomb, whose power was just as Voss had surmised. It could completely destroy Payan in a short amount of time. Ren informed everyone that although the bomb's creator, Olaman, had died, a large stockpile was stored at the House of Enlightenment. If they could destroy the bombs before Tormata acted, they could prevent the upcoming war. After deliberation, Voss decided to lead a team back at the House of Enlightenment, not only to destroy the bombs, but also to rescue Olaman's family. Learning that the bomb's raw material was coal, Harlan became pensive. After the meeting, Harlan went to the ambassador's residence, and confirming Voss's information, he held a knife to the ambassador's throat, convinced she had come with a hidden agenda. The ambassador remained calm, and instead of responding directly, she provocatively told him it's up to him to decide whether to kill her or kiss her. The two had been acquainted for many years and rarely hid the truth from each other. Harlan's actions were driven by the fact that he had been smuggling coal to Trivant with the ambassador as his contact. Yet the ambassador claimed to be oblivious to the bomb-making. At the same time, in the kingdom of Trivant, representatives of the Triangular Council were in discussions about the nation of Payan. Just as Voss had predicted, the military representative viewed Edo's defeat as a disgrace. With advanced technology now available, they believed it was possible to wage war against Payan once again and reclaim the dignity that belonged to Trivant. However, other representatives disagreed. They insisted on waiting for the Trivant ambassador to return before making any decisions. That evening, Haniwa and Ren were whispering sweet nothings to each other. Ren was still deeply haunted by the fear of the bombs. Haniwa comforted her injured lover using her skinny muscles. But in reality, what saddened Ren more was the fact that by defecting, she could never return to Trivant, bringing shame upon her parents as well. Thinking of this, Ren was heartbroken, even recalling General Edo, who was like a father to her. As midnight approached, Kofun stealthily entered the place where the queen used to be imprisoned. He quietly closed the door behind him, then moved to the end of the room. After opening a wooden panel, a hidden basement was revealed. The queen asked if he had found a safe place. It turned out that Kofun had hidden the queen away, not wanting his son to grow up motherless. It was revealed that Kofun would be leaving with Voss for a few days, which is why he had brought extra food. The queen inquired why he had to leave, and Kofun relayed the information about the bomb storage. After Kofun left, a maid emerged from a compartment beside the queen, serving her. It seems that the queen had secured her new loyal follower even under desperate situations. The next morning, the queen went to the baby's room. She had a new plan and decided to take her child with her. Just then, she sensed Voss entering the room. She quickly drew a weapon from her wrist. Enemies in sight, tensions were high. However, Voss, considering the child in her arms, dared not act rashly. The queen remained calm, soothing her fussing child while threatening Voss not to come closer, or she would kill the child. Voss said he is her son, to which the queen replied he's hers, but she'd rather destroy him than lose him. Voss insisted she could not harm the child. The queen mocked Voss, saying that as the son of a Trivant slave owner, he had no right to question anyone. The frustrated Voss immediately put his knife to the queen's throat. At this tense moment, Kofun arrived. Through their conversation, Voss realized that it was Kofun who had hidden the queen. Kofun roared like a goose at the queen, demanding to know what she intended to do. The queen said she planned to take the child away and return when the time was right to assist this chosen one to ascend to the throne. Hearing this, Kofun became furious. He exclaimed that the child was blind and not a chosen one as per the prophecy. The shocking truth brought the queen to some crocodile tears. She threatened to kill this blind child. Just as Kofun was about to take the child, the maid suddenly appeared to flex her figure and stabbed Kofun, allowing the queen to take the opportunity to escape. Voss quickly sent the maid to serve Satan in hell and rushed to check on Kofun's wounds, finding him bleeding profusely. However, Kofun ignored his own condition, desperately crawling towards his child. Elsewhere, the queen was stealthily seeking to evade her pursuers, with the soldiers already catching her smelly scent. At a critical juncture, she smelled a stable, a potential lifeline if she hoped to survive. As her chasers closed in, the queen smeared horse dung on her face, erasing her scent and throwing the hounds off her trail. Thus, the wily queen narrowly escaped once more. Aware of her dire situation, she needed to flee Pensa, find a place to hide her sexy but smelly body for a few days, and then devise her next move. Fortuitously, a Ferrari carriage rolled by, and she quickly formulated a plan, following the Ferrari carriage discreetly and slipping past the city's security checks. The fresh air of freedom mattered little to her. Deep down, she was convinced that upon her eventual return to Pensa, she would reclaim her throne. Back in the city of Pensa, Voss held his annoying grandson in arm, imparting final words before tenderly placing him back in the cradle. The scene shifts to the lush mountains as Voss and his retinue departed Pensa, urgently heading to the House of Enlightenment to destroy the bombs before Tormata could act like a mad dog. Along the way, Kofun confessed his regret for letting the cursed queen escape. Voss, however, did not chide his son, but praised him for learning the meaning of responsibility and duty. Kofun's actions were those of a protective father, and their conversation melted any tension between them, sharing a moment of heartfelt connection. After some time on foot, they reached the home of Voss's friend Ranger. He wanted to witness the destructive power of the bombs and to enlist his friend's help. Upon seeing the crater left by an explosion, they were all rendered speechless. Inside Ranger's airplane hangar home, Voss explained their mission. While Ranger initially expressed indifference towards Trivant, he had no intention of fighting for Payan. But when he learned that Tormata was behind the chaos, Ranger promptly agreed to join their cause. It was clear that both Voss and Ranger, as Trivantians, harbored unresolved grudges against the mad scientist Tormata, the details of which remain undisclosed for now. Shortly thereafter, the team of 5 was joined by Ranger and his wife, making it a party of 7 setting out for the House of Enlightenment. Meanwhile, the queen, who had escaped, was living a nightmare. Accustomed to luxury from a young age, she had never suffered like this and lacked wilderness survival skills. But her will was strong. She not only ate leaves to stave off hunger, but also chewed live centipedes. One can't help but admire her resilience to adapt to dire circumstances like Bear Grylls in Man vs. Wild. That night, amidst the howling of hungry wolves, the queen covered herself with a pile of leaves, enduring a night of sheer terror. At the same time, the ambassador and Harlan began their return to Trivant. Harlan was brought along to act as a witness, to clarify to the members of the Triangular Council that a mad scientist named Tormata was attempting to start a war. War motives without permission were a signal of internal rebellion and treason. Soon, the two returned to Trivant, the most developed among the blind countries. All Trivantians are blind, yet their remarkable capabilities are beyond the reach of those with sight. The ambassador told Harlan that she would summon a representative. If they could confirm Tormata's war motives, she would have him eliminated immediately. At that moment, the financial representative walked in. She was a member of the Trivant Triangular Council. After the ambassador's statement, the representative seemed unconcerned about the so-called rebellion, instead suggesting that keeping their enemy Harlan there was not a wise decision. That very night, as the ambassador lay in Harlan's arms, she urged him to stay and build a life there instead of returning to Payan Kingdom. Harlan found the idea inconceivable because he built the Pensa city with his own hands, and Payan is his homeland. However, the ambassador's suggestion hinted at events that would soon unfold, events far beyond Harlan's imagination. The following morning, Trivant held its Triangular Council meeting. Tormata sat atop a bomb, reporting on how he had used such a device to end the Gannet people. He then suggested that, with such powerful weapons at their disposal, Trivant could launch a new war to expand its authority and territory. The military representative, detecting arrogance in Tormata's tone, cautioned him to watch his words. Tormata, however, just chuckled, unfazed by the warning. Sensing Tormata's disregard, the military representative lost his temper and ordered sanctions against him. But before it could go further, the financial representative interrupted. She argued that Trivant was in decline, and to restore the nation's former glory, she supported Tormata's proposition. Her statement shocked the military and the representatives. It was nothing short of treasonous. Amidst the chaotic scene, the financial representative exited the meeting room. Shortly after, someone lit a fuse. Unsurprisingly, the other end was attached to the very bomb Tormata had brought. Harlan, eavesdropping from outside, was analyzing the meeting's discussions when the ambassador rushed to him, warning him to leave immediately. Confused, Harlan was about to ask for clarification when the sound of the explosion erupted. That evening, the ambassador revealed everything to Harlan. It turned out that after the previous war with Payan, Tormata and the financial representative had approached her, and the three of them had formed a new alliance. The ambassador's mission to retrieve the queen's head from Payan had merely been a stalling tactic before the war. The day's rebellion had long been a part of their plan. Harlan was left feeling devastated by these revelations. He questioned why she had even brought him into this. She replied that it was all because of love. She didn't want to see him die in Payan. While Trayvon was undergoing a coup, the queen was in her own struggle against fate, cold and hungry, slipping into delirium. Just then, a python approached her. Sensing the impending danger, she screamed in despair, cursing her sister and the world's injustice towards her. In the python's attack, she fell and lost consciousness. The next day, the queen awoke to find herself alive, surprisingly holding a dead python in her grasp. In her frenzy the night before, she had unintentionally killed the snake. Determined to survive, she began to eat the python. Later, she bathed in the cold waterfall, an evil smile spreading across her face. Meanwhile, Gerlamarel's family was busy making bombs. Their skilled hands indicated this wasn't their first time at such a task. Blind soldiers supervised nearby. Though they couldn't see, their ears hardly missed any wrongdoing. At the same time, Voss and his companions were nearing the House of Enlightenment. They approached stealthily, observing their surroundings. Then, Voss directed his team to split into two groups for a pincer movement. Haniwa led one group through the back door, while Voss created a diversion to attract the main force of the guards. It didn't take long for the guards to sense something amiss and arm themselves, groping towards Voss's noises. A bloody skirmish quickly ensued. On the other side, Haniwa's group of 4 made it to the workshop without issue and swiftly overpowered all the guards. The scene was set for a Gerlamarel family reunion. As Haniwa's group arrived from inside, Voss's trio had just finished off all their foes. However, before they could catch their breath, they sensed an even greater danger approaching. It's Tormata who was coming with a large force. Voss instructed everyone to hide. That's when the confused Haniwa noticed that Harlan was among Tormata's troops. The scene shifts back to the city of Pensa, where Magra was holding a meeting. She shared with everyone the warning from Trivant, delivered by Ren, and then commanded all units to prepare for war. In such a critical situation, the witch hunters were not idle. Their mindset had undergone a change. Under the leader's proclamation, they were ready to shed blood and serve their country, preparing to face Trivant alongside the nation. It was at this moment that someone brought news that the queen had arrived. The leader believed it's the new Queen Magra, but was surprised to find that it was Queen Cain who had returned. Several people hurriedly hid in a room, terrified of something. It turned out that a blind troop led by Tormata had arrived. In this world dominated by the blind, their abilities surpassed that of the sighted. After confirming that all the guards had been killed, Tormata couldn't guess who had been there and could only dispatch a squad to conduct a thorough search. The soldiers reported that a door had been blocked. Tormata took this as a sign that someone was inside. They reached the bomb storage and, after groping around, found everything intact. Proceeding to the workshop, they discovered it empty, with several guards' bodies lying on the floor. The lieutenant quickly reported the situation to Tormata, who ordered a search of all nearby areas to catch Gerlamarel's sighted children. The ambassador came over and said their objective was to take the bombs and leave quickly. Tormata mentioned that the weapon maker, Olaman, was dead, so they needed to capture some workers, or else they would eventually run out of bombs. The pursuers soon found the group led by Ren. It turned out they had split into 2, prioritizing hiding the children first. However, their tracks had already been exposed, and they had no choice but to confront the enemy head-on. After securing the children, 3 women set up their formation. The soldiers of Trivant were fully armed and presented a challenge to defeat. The soldiers said they didn't want to harm the children. Ren struck first, and the battle erupted. Ranger's wife was exceptionally skilled, quickly securing a kill. The comrade could discern her opponents by sound, using minimal force to neutralize their attacks. Ren, with the advantage of sight, ensured that each strike was deadly. After a fierce struggle, the three women annihilated Trivant's assault squad. Once everything was in order, they continued to seek a safe place and awaited the rendezvous with Voss and the rest. The scene shifts back to Gerla Morel's base, where Voss and his companions took cover behind a door, watching to see how things would unfold. At that moment, Tormata approached the blocked door, inquiring who was inside and trying to negotiate a peaceful resolution. However, the response from inside caught him off guard. Gerla Morel's eldest daughter, Sheva, retorted with a curse before Ranger also approached the door and added another curse. Recognizing Ranger's long-missed voice, Tormata was taken aback. Back in the day, after Ranger rescued Voss, General Edo had him thrown in the dungeon. Tormata, obsessed with researching ways to restore sight, had subjected Ranger's body to countless experiments. Since then, the two harbored a deep-seated enmity. Back to the present, Tormata asked who would negotiate with him. Voss stepped forward, telling Tormata to go to hell with his negotiation. Tormata realized then that Voss had not been killed in the blast, and saw this as a golden opportunity to capture so many outlaws at once. Now that identities were revealed, a battle was inevitable. Tormata ordered the doors to be broken down. Voss assessed the number of Tormata's soldiers, evaluating the upcoming fight. With Haniwa and Kofun joining him, they could just about manage the confrontation. Sheva led Haniwa to the study and revealed a secret weapon, a trigger-pulled device capable of killing a target. Haniwa, having never seen such a thing, was unaware of its power. Meanwhile, the soldiers outside had finished assembling. Under Tormata's command and with a battering ram, they broke open the sealed door and a squad of muscular soldiers rushed in searching for any good-looking girls, despite them being blind. But the soldiers were clueless about how ferocious the people inside were. They soon witnessed Voss's prowess as he silently killed a man at close range. As the troops pushed further in, the real melee commenced. Ranger was agile like a mad cow, and Voss was nothing short of heroic, his smooth moves as dashing as in his younger years. After dealing with the first wave of soldiers, more squads entered the room, still searching for any good-looking girls. Voss created some girly noises and smoothly stepped back, adopting a defensive stance like a girl. Ranger readied his sharp weapon, eagerly anticipating the battle. In the confined space, close-quarter combat ensued, fist against flesh, in a brutal, bloodthirsty brawl. Haniwa, lacking in strength, had to rely on her wits. She lured the enemy into the study, ready to swing a hammer at them, but when she realized there were two more behind her, she ceased her motion, not daring to act rashly. Suddenly, Sheva shot the enemies with a gun, stunning Haniwa with the weapon's formidable power. She hadn't imagined that a so-called handgun could be so potent. The gunshot alerted Tormata outside, who realized that no one could stand against such a weapon. He decided not to engage further and quickly left the scene. In haste, Tormata took all the remaining bombs and fled the area. The ambassador in retreat was suddenly embraced by Harlan, who prevented her from making any chicken sound. At that moment, a group of mysterious figures arrived and swiftly killed the remaining Trivant soldiers. These were Harlan's reinforcements, all secret guards from the kingdom of Payan. The infuriated ambassador demanded to know why Harlan had betrayed her. Harlan retorted that she was the one who had betrayed him first. The ambassador argued that she had given him a new life, and that if he returned to Payan, only death awaited him. Their heated exchange was cut short by a muffled thud. The ambassador was stabbed through the heart with a dagger. Harlan quickly laid the ambassador down. With Kofun using an electric shock to take down the last few soldiers, the remnants of the Trivant forces were eradicated. Once they regrouped, Shiva immediately thought of the bombs. As expected, the bomb storage had already been emptied. The group went outside, and Voss charged at Harlan, accusing him of conspiring with the ambassador to deceive the Payan kingdom. It was only after Kofun's explanation that Voss let go of Harlan. Kofun insisted they must now pursue the bombs, but Harlan said it was impossible to catch up to them. The priority should be to return to Payan first. Voss agreed with Harlan, guessing that Tormata must be heading toward Payan. Shortly thereafter, Harlan placed the ambassador's body on a horse and told his man to take her back to her homeland. The man understood Harlan's feelings and consoled him to mourn in moderation. Haniwa, packing her gear, waited in vain for her father to arrive. However, she soon saw thick smoke billowing from the base. By the time she rushed in, the scene before her left her stunned. Voss had set fire to all the books in the study. Haniwa saw these books as the legacy of human civilization and couldn't fathom why they were being destroyed. She tried to rush over to stop her father, but Kofun pushed her heavy body to the ground. The next second, Haniwa pulled out a pistol and fired. Kofun approached Haniwa, urging her to stay calm, and then the two grappled with each other. For the first time, the siblings erupted into a fight. Just then, Voss emerged and separated them. Amid Haniwa's anguished cries, the fierce flames consumed everything, and the rare copies of human civilization were reduced to ashes. Voss was sorry for his actions, but in his view, this was the best way to prevent human warfare. The scene shifts. Voss and his group met with Ren's team in the jungle. After a brief explanation, the comrade took the children to find a new home, while Voss and his companions hurried back to the kingdom of Payan. At this moment, Sheva approached. After all, she and Haniwa were half-sisters, sharing the same father Jerlamarel. The two naturally embraced in a heartfelt farewell. Meanwhile, Queen Cain was among the crowd, swaying opinions. She exploited the witch hunters' superstitious belief in the divine, continuing to propagate the prophecy of the Chosen One, claiming that all these events were orchestrated by the gods. She blamed the incident of chopping down the ancestral dam on her sister, asserting that her own misdeeds were merely the result of Megra and June's bewitchment. The crowd became agitated upon the mention of Megra's sighted offspring. Seeing the opportunity, the queen pressed her advantage, unleashing her signature roar, and successfully secured everyone's trust. With this, a crisis both within and without loomed over the kingdom of Payan. Meanwhile, Voss and his companions evacuate the House of Enlightenment, speeding towards the kingdom of Payan. After traveling for a while, Harlan complained about their slow pace and suggested a shortcut he knew, which could save them 1 to 2 days. But Voss learned that the route was dangerous. Considering their skills, Voss decided to take Harlan's advice. Led by Harlan, they took a path that opened up before them, but as they moved forward, the path became increasingly narrow, especially at a point littered with car wrecks, where a dangerous aura began to spread. Voss took this opportunity to teach his son the importance of forgiveness, and asked Kofun to make amends with his sister. Persuaded by their father, Kofun and Haniwa reconciled. It was at this moment that Voss sensed danger and ordered everyone to halt because he felt a threat approaching. Unexpectedly, the enemy struck with ferocity, startling the Ferrari horses and instilling a pressing sense of dread. As they braced for battle, Harlan's friend was ambushed, and the fight kicked off. The enemy was swift, and their attacks caught everyone off guard. In a moment of stalemate, the blind enemies dragged the ugly Harlan into the jungle, possibly believing he was a beautiful girl. Ren tried to help but was also captured. Haniwa quickly followed in pursuit. The remaining 3 were hard-pressed to fend off the attackers. After dispatching a few enemies, Kofun realized Haniwa was missing. Haniwa was in hot pursuit of Ren, watching as the enemy fled away, holding her heavy body in pain. Haniwa skillfully shot an arrow, halting their escape. She managed to finish several, but she was no match for their numbers. By the time Voss arrived, Haniwa had disappeared, though Ren had luckily survived thanks to her heavy body weight. In the calm that followed, Voss surmised that this could be the work of a cannibalistic tribe, taking Harlan and the others to ensure freshness. With the Payan kingdom in danger, Voss ordered Kofun to ride back to Pensa City to report the situation, while he and the others stayed behind to mount a rescue. Kofun was torn. He wanted to help, but knew his mother and the people of Pensa City needed him just as much. With no other choice, Kofun reluctantly rode away on his Ferrari. Meanwhile, Megra and June were on their way to the council hall, discussing why the witch hunters had suddenly disappeared. As they neared the hall, Megra sensed something was off. She couldn't feel anyone inside. They crept into the council hall to be met with the stench of blood. Upon searching, Megra found a cold corpse. After checking each body, June concluded that all the members of Payan's council had been killed, and the brutal methods bore the signature of the witch hunters. Back in her room, Megra was furious with regret for not having executed the witch hunters when she had the chance. She lamented that her mercy has led to the death of all the council members. On the other side, Tormata and his team, carrying bombs, were advancing swiftly towards the front lines of Payan, hoping to catch the enemy off guard. Crossing a vast wasteland, they entered a jungle. Some might wonder if just 3 carts of bombs could take down a nation. But it's worth mentioning here that in the world of the blind, battles between nations seldom involved more than 1,000 people. Just then, the leading warrior sensed movement. In the blink of an eye, Tormata's team was thoroughly surrounded. Upon Tormata's inquiry, the omnipotent queen appeared. It turned out that after seizing control of the witch hunters, not only had she destroyed the Payan Council, but she had also anticipated Tormata's arrival. Knowing it's Queen Cain, Tormata immediately bowed in submission. The scene shifts to Haniwa, who woke up, only to realize she had been kidnapped. Glancing at the stove inside the hut, she shivered in terror. They were eating people. Harlan shifted closer to Haniwa and whispered that they needed to find a way to escape quickly, or it would be too late for them to be rescued. Haniwa insisted her father would not abandon them, but Harlan argued that the matters in Pensa were more critical than them. His words made Haniwa tense up. Seeing the cannibals feasting on human flesh nearly brought her to tears. At that moment, Haniwa noticed some glass shards behind Harlan and gestured for him to grab them. Their voices attracted the attention of the cannibal chief, who approached and grabbed Harlan, dragging him to one side. Simultaneously, Ren ignited a pile of branches, creating thick smoke as a diversion to draw out the enemies. Soon, 2 cannibals were lured over, but were swiftly dealt with by Ranger. Another slowly entered the ambush zone, and Voss struck with his blade, tackling the enemy to the ground. He then delivered another blow to the arm, causing the enemy to scream in a chicken voice and flee like a panicked chicken. Voss intentionally avoided a fatal attack, intending to follow the chicken to find the chicken's lair amidst the unknown dangers, a situation not new to the seasoned warrior. Soon after, the enemies, howling, rushed back to their camp. Hearing the call, the cannibal chief hurried out. Before the wounded enemy could report back, Voss followed closely and struck first blood. The chief, realizing he faced a formidable foe, not a fool, subtly readied his defenses and a spectacular boss battle commenced. The chief caught Voss by the neck and threw him to the ground, then raised his knife for a downward thrust. However, Voss turned defense into offense and engaged in muscle wrestling with his opponent. Their heavyweight tussle was visceral and intense. After blocking an attack, Voss counterattacked 3 times in quick succession, using the momentum to roll over and pin his opponent to the ground. Voss found the chief's wound and with a yank ended the chief's reign. The situation inside the room took a turn. It turned out that when Harlan was dragged away, he had managed to grab some shards of glass, which he then used to cut through his bonds. Haniwa called out to Harlan for help, but her cries alerted the cannibal at the stove. The cannibal rushed over and pinned Haniwa's skinny body down, and just as he was about to bite into her smelly part, Harlan appeared in the nick of time and rescued her shitty life. A scuffle broke out in the room, and although Harlan overpowered the enemy, he sustained a severe wound to his abdomen. As the two emerged from the room, Ranger and Ren also arrived. By then, Harlan could barely hold on. Upon examination, they realized his condition was critical. Knowing his time was short, yet without any hint of fear, Harlan asked Haniwa that when she recounted this experience in the future, to please make him sound more heroic. Hearing such a dying request, Haniwa laughed through her tears, on the verge of crying. At that moment, Harlan fumbled for a key and entrusted Haniwa to deliver it to Magra. After Harlan declined any further help, they had no choice but to leave him behind. Harlan's last words to Voss were a plea not to let his city fall to the enemy. With his final words spoken, Harlan quietly passed away. Meanwhile, June and Magra arrived at the blacksmith shop. June asked the bearded blacksmith where the witch hunter had gone. The blacksmith flexed his messy beard but evaded the question. So June pinned the blacksmith to the table and brandished a red-hot weapon close to his face, ready to shave his messy beard off. Seeing that the bearded man still refused to confess, Magra took out a whistle sword and cut off one of his fingers, but spared his beard. The blacksmith revealed they were in the backyard of the smithy, in a house. As the villain's downfall in a film is often due to talking too much, the group got the information they needed and was about to leave when the blacksmith cursed Magra, wishing her a terrible death. Magra ordered her men to chop off his beard and the entire hand. It seemed Magra had learned a lesson. Indeed, meeting violence with violence was effective. Subsequently, June and his men located the witch hunter's hideout. Barely exchanging a few words, the witch hunters swarmed out, aware that their treachery had been exposed and leaving no room for mercy. After a bloody and brutal melee, all the witch hunters were annihilated. Magra demanded the plans from a sub-leader who told her that she had no authority to command them, for they now served Queen Cain, who would use a bomb to destroy her vile sightseers. This revelation stunned Magra. The scene shifts back to the frontline positions of the Payan Kingdom, where Queen Cain, holding a bomb, is musing about the future. At this moment, Tormada is brought into the room. The queen starts to outline her future plans, boasting that with such a weapon, the whole world could be hers. Tormata thanks the queen for sharing, to which she responds that she only shares such plans with her husband. Then she asks Tormata if he would be willing to be her first husband. Not hearing such a sexy proposal within a decade, the ugly Tormata promptly accepts it to reach a deal, in fear that the queen might withdraw it seconds later. This turn of events sparked immediate objection from the witch-hunting leader present, who felt the queen should not debase herself by marrying such an ugly guy and allying with the enemy nation. The queen, without offering an explanation, requested his sword and then sent him to meet Satan. Following this, the queen and Tormata officially formed an alliance. Standing at the front line, they listened to the warriors preparing for battle. The strategy had now changed from burying bombs to inventing a bomb catapult. It seemed a difficult battle was about to unfold. On the other side, Kofun returned to the Payan kingdom. However, just as he entered the territory of Pensa, a rope suddenly appeared, startling his horse, and in the fall, Kofun was trying to get his bearings when someone knocked him out cold. It turned out that it was the queen's men who had intercepted him. Kofun was shocked by everything he saw before him, and the queen was even more surprised to have caught Kofun. The queen said he was always one step behind her, and she should thank him for rescuing her from Magra's clutches. Kofun argued that she couldn't cooperate with the Trivantians, as they would destroy the kingdom of Payan. But the queen said that was precisely the outcome she desired, blaming Magra for stealing her crown. Kofun was then taken away to watch the impending disaster unfold. A group of blind people were busy loading bombs. They wrapped them in cloth, twisted the timers tight, and then prepared to launch them using a trebuchet. The sub-leader groped his way across the map, taking measurements. They had already established all the coordinates for Payan. With just one command, they could obliterate the entire city of Pensa. Meanwhile, Voss led his people back to Pensa, whereas Magra was burying the witch hunters. They were soldiers trained by June himself, and time had turned them into enemies. Out of respect for their shared battles, June chose to accompany them on their final journey. At that moment, Magra learned from one of the witch hunters that the queen had taken command of a few guards and was conspiring with Tormata of Trivent for war. June reported that the Payan army was ready to face any imminent attack, but they had underestimated the power of the bombs. Feeling the proximity of Pensa City, the queen issued the command to fire. As the drums of attack sounded, bombs were hurled towards the city ahead. The violent explosions echoed back to the camp, thrilling the queen. She immediately ordered another round of attacks. With the aid of a precise coordinate system, every bomb found its mark without fail. Magra, worried about her grandson, rushed towards the royal palace. At that moment, the guards and maids were fleeing for their lives. The scene was chaotic and in disarray. Fortunately, Magra found the child, but just as she was about to descend the stairs, a shell struck the building. The entire palace collapsed instantly, leaving Magra and the child's fate unknown. At the same time, Voss and a few others avoided the bombs and hurried to the palace. Following the sound of a baby's cry, they found Magra and the child, thankfully unharmed. The queen had nearly predicted the tragedy in Pensa City. She ordered a halt to the attacks, pausing the advance, claiming she wanted her sister to fully comprehend the situation. Kofun confronted her, saying she was bombing her own child. The queen retorted that it was his grandmother who was to blame, just as she had led Kofun to his current plight. Back in his tent, Kofun pleaded with the queen to stop the war, trying to awaken her compassion by mentioning her son. His words brought tears to the queen's crocodile eyes, but these seemed to be tears not of sentiment, but of a perverse joy mocking fate. Returning to Pensa, the aftermath of the bombardment was one of widespread mourning. Many homes lay in ruins. Ren climbed to the city walls to survey the scene, finding witch hunters and Trivantians standing outside. Haniwa, leading a group of civilians, attempted to escape through the main gate, but upon opening it, they were met by guarding soldiers. Once calm was restored, they began to discuss options, believing the queen had the power to destroy the city, but had stopped because she still wished to rule over it. Given the current situation, Payan had no power to resist the queen. Magra thought of Harlan. If he were here, he could negotiate peace with the Trivantians. Haniwa then informed her mother that Harlan had died trying to save her, handing over a key. At that moment, Kofun returned. He recounted his experiences and conveyed the queen's ultimatum. If Magra abdicated and surrendered, the queen would stop the assault and free everyone. Otherwise, she would level the city to the ground. Magra was injured, and upon waking, her first thought was to seek peace with her sister. But Voss pointed out that even if Magra went to the evil queen, it would not change the current situation. They needed to think of other solutions. At this point, Magra found Harlan's key, and together with her daughter, they went to Harlan's room. After some searching, they opened a box containing Magra's beloved tuning fork from her childhood and a map of Pensa City. Spreading out the map, Magra concluded that Harlan had left behind a secret tunnel leading directly to the outskirts of the city. Quickly, Haniwa and Ren searched the city, and after turning down several streets, they found the tunnel entrance. The space inside was large enough to move the civilians to safety. Once Magra learned the details, she coordinated the evacuation and planned to regroup the army on the outskirts. Afterwards, Magra sat in Voss's embrace and told him that once everything was over, she planned to lay down her crown and return to the forest, to a life far from the commotion, back to their humble beginnings. Pensa City, once bustling and lively, was now a broken and chaotic home. Harlan could not have foreseen his own fate, but he had anticipated the city's needs and left behind the tunnel as a last hope for the people. The citizens orderly entered the tunnel and began a day and night journey of escape. Magra and her family huddled together, encouraging each other. Voss urged everyone to regain their confidence, assuring them that they would overcome the difficulties. As everyone left, Pensa City became empty, its air still heavy with the scent of smoke, as if narrating its former glory. It was then that everyone realized that Voss had disappeared. While Kofun and Haniwa wanted to return to look for him, Magra stopped them. She understood Voss better than she understood herself. If he had left, it was surely to find her sister. The scene shifted to Voss, donning his armor and heading towards the city gate. Just as Magra had said, he was going to confront the queen alone, to settle both new and old scores. Voss knelt down to pet his dog, then resolutely departed. But as he opened the city gate and stepped out, a familiar presence appeared at his side. It's Ranger, Voss's loyal friend who had never let him down. The two decided to join forces against the evil queen. Voss and Ranger stealthily infiltrated the queen's camp, attacking from the outside in, each strike aimed to be lethal. By tracking the queen's scent, Voss quickly located the target tent, but upon their search, they found it empty. It turned out that Tormata had taken the queen away because the seer had detected a significant development. She couldn't hear any noise from the city above, but caught the dull sounds coming from underground. The clever queen immediately thought of the tunnel. As the drums of attack resounded, soldiers began to fill bombs, and soon all the catapults were launched. In the blink of an eye, a barrage of bombs rained down, leveling the city and shaking the tunnel with their force. Kofun, worried about the risk of collapse, went forward to inspect, only to find the tunnel badly damaged and impassable. Magra rushed over to check on her son, and after ensuring he was unharmed, made new plans. With the queen's bombs still falling, waiting to die was not an option. It was better to return to the surface and fight to the death. Upon hearing this, everyone agreed with her plan. Meanwhile, the seer detected the presence of 2 assassins in the camp. The queen, sensing the possibility of it being Voss, ordered a temporary halt to the attack and began searching for Voss and Ranger. As the net closed in on them, Ranger thought of a plan. They pretended to be dead bodies lying on the ground, thus avoiding the search party. After escaping, they were about to leave when an enemy sub-leader rushed at them. He was large and agile, and his unexpected attack pierced Voss's left arm. Just as the blade was about to hit his head, Voss pulled the enemy in and bit off his ear in full earwax. In pain, the man became frenzied, grabbing Voss and landing several punches, with the last one dazing him. Just as he was about to draw his sword and end the fight, Ranger arrived and stabbed him in the stomach. However, the man was incredibly strong. He pulled the long knife from his body and swung it at Ranger. Voss intervened, finishing off the man with a few swift cuts. As Voss fought bravely, his wife Magra also arrived at the camp, seeking peace. The only way to achieve it was to either kill the queen or convince her. The queen was in high spirits, convinced her sister was coming to surrender. Tormata advised her not to be swayed by emotion, but the queen believed she could easily manipulate her sister. The queen then ordered a halt to the bombing and walked towards her sister. Before Magra could open her mouth, the queen had already delivered her victory speech. She touched her cheek. Magra stayed silent until her sister finished reveling in joy. Then she started whispering softly. Magra first admitted she was unworthy of being a queen, before reminiscing about their carefree childhood, free from the struggle for power, filled only with touching stories of a sister's love. As she reached the heartfelt part, the queen shed sudden crocodile tears. Despite their sisterly bond, she stated that sacrificing her sister was necessary to end the war. Unexpectedly, Magra acted first to stab her neck. The queen was shocked by her actions, but her shock turned to joy because she realized that her sister had finally grown up and the dynasty was no longer a concern. With a mix of familial affection and resentment towards fate, the queen met her end at the hands of her sister Magra, perhaps finding her best rest. Tormata ordered Magra's death, and the long-awaited June charged out. Tormata took command as Kofun also arrived. He ordered the continuation of the assault on Pensa before retreating to the camp. The catapults began their work, and Pensa City was ablaze once again. The citizens who had just returned to the ground had to resign to their fate. As more soldiers surrounded them, June and Magra could only cope. Despite Kofun and his team's sight, they were at no advantage in close combat. Right then, Voss reached the bomb's core, and a familiar voice rang out. It was Tormata, saying he had been searching for a long time. With a throw, he hurled a grenade at Voss. The bizarre move left Kofun and Haniwa in shock. They plunged into the crowd, trying to save their father. Fearing Voss wasn't dead yet, Tormata pulled out another grenade, vowing not to repeat the same mistake. At that moment, Ranger charged in and pinned him down. A loud explosion filled the sky with smoke. Ranger woke up and turned over to find Tormata gasping for air. Clenching the blade in his hand, Ranger ended his decades-old nemesis with a piercing scream. The bombardment of the city continued unabated, with panicked citizens scurrying for cover. The deafening blasts roused Voss from his slumber, who rose to his feet in pain. At that moment, Haniwa broke through the danger to reach his side. Voss told his daughter they were out of time. He had to destroy the bomb to put an end to the slaughter. Haniwa burst into tears, fully aware of the gravity of her father's mission. After speaking his final words, Voss prepared for a ferocious onslaught. He shed his shirt, revealing a torso marred by bloody wounds, and he let out a goose roar of defiance, ready to engage in the ultimate battle for his family. Fearless and invincible, Voss used the darkness to listen for his enemy's attacks, striking back with even greater ferocity. The path was short, yet it proved excruciatingly difficult. His blood-stained body only fueled his warrior-like resolve. From a distance, Haniwa fought desperately, taking down any enemy that posed a threat to her father. Despite her efforts, Voss was still wounded, but the pain of multiple cuts couldn't stop his advance. A lieutenant, wielding a hefty hammer, charged at him. The momentum brought Voss to the ground, but he rose and seized the man, forcefully tearing through his neck. As more enemies closed in, Voss picked up the hammer and climbed atop the bomb. Holding the hammer aloft, time seemed to stand still for a moment. He sensed his family's presence, and in a sudden, he saw glimpses of the past. As if by some telepathy, his family ceased their fighting. Kofun's cries of desperation echoed as Haniwa's emotions overwhelmed her at that moment. Voss resolutely raised the hammer. Right then, memories, warmth and happiness, bitterness and reluctance flashed before him, all about to be obliterated in the next instant. He hit the bombs, and his sacrifice brought a fleeting peace, and normalcy was momentarily restored. Margaret crossed the streets every day, arriving at the resting place of Voss. There, she reminisced about her husband, pondering where he might have gone after death, and whether he had found the peace that was truly his own. Meanwhile, Haniwa and the others erected a tombstone for their father, and a wave of sorrow enveloped the jungle. Half a year later, Haniwa and Ren tied the knot. Adorned with fresh flowers, their joyous appearance was the envy of onlookers. The Trivent and the Payan entered into peace negotiations, politicking over power. Kofun grew more mature through these experiences, even showing a unique leadership flair reminiscent of Voss. Besides that, Kofun also learned how to be a father. He wanted to be there as his son grew, to share with him the legendary tales of Voss. June remained by Margra's side, loyally serving the new queen. Ranger said his goodbyes one evening, leaving Margra before retreating back into the solitude of the jungle. As time marched on, seasons changed swiftly. The comrade returned to Pensa from the mountains, and after brief pleasantries, she revealed the purpose of her visit. Shiva had entrusted her with a map for Haniwa. With just a glance, Haniwa recognized its significance. After the comrade left, Haniwa unfolded the map. It was the grand house of enlightenment she had never seen before. She called Ren, packed their bags, and without saying goodbye to anyone, they quietly left the city of Pensa. They embarked on a journey in pursuit of new knowledge. A year later, Margra and her son sat on a bench recounting recent events. They missed Haniwa, who had left without a word, and they also discussed plans for the future. Kofun told his mother of a decision he had made. In a world of the blind, he and his son would listen, taste, and feel the world in the same way. Meanwhile, Haniwa and Ren arrived at a building, spacious and shadowy with no signs of life. In the main hall, a painting depicted a colossal whale and tiny humans. They moved on, and passing through a doorway, they entered a brightly lit, bustling space. Upon closer observation, they saw a throng of people immersed in a sea of books, sitting among various strange objects. Some were studying wireless technology and computers, others tinkering with guns and ammunition. Haniwa and Ren were astounded because this was the first time they had seen so many sighted people. An elderly woman noticed them and welcomed them. Everyone's friendly glances followed. Haniwa and Ren introduced themselves and confidently made their way downstairs. Despite it being their first meeting, it felt like a reunion with long-lost relatives. The camera slowly zoomed out to show the group within a dilapidated building, which was just the tip of the iceberg in a world of ruins. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.